Hello. Hello, beautiful soul. How are you today? I pray that you are doing well. Welcome to a whole new week of your life. That's right. As we are emerging back into the world, I'm curious to know how you're doing. How are things in your country? I am coming to you today live from the sunny south of France. I'm in Cannes, and this marks the beginning of week 2 of our deconfinement, the déconfinement. So most businesses are opening up. Kids are even back in school, little by little. It's not 100%, it's going by zone. But here on the French Riviera, I feel the energy moving, and people seem to be feeling a little more free, which I think is probably a good thing. So I want to know, how have you been doing? And thank you for tuning in, because today, this idea about speaking about life purpose is actually really important. So I'm excited to dive on in. Thank you all for being here. You can go ahead and type into the chat where you are tuning in from. I see my friend Ninette, who's normally in Denmark. I imagine that's where you are. And hello, Katrina King. Very glad to have you with us as well. So today we're talking specifically about life purpose. This is a very important topic because without an inspiring life purpose, that is where one invites in all sorts of bad things, including illness, disease, and even death. I'm not trying to go all deep and scary on you, but what I noticed is I gave a TED Talk back in 2014. And this TED Talk, the first one I did, was called Become Who You Really Are. And it was all about me admitting that I had been challenged with depression and anxiety, and that I had been hiding my true self behind the roles that I played as a physician, as a TV broadcaster, and coming out with my story was really for me. It was for me to just feel free and not feel like a fraud anymore, because I was really feeling like the typical imposter syndrome. And the challenge was I wasn't feeling like I was totally fulfilled, even though I had achieved success. I had reached some goals that I set for myself and goals that society and family had set. But what I noticed is, as I came out with my story about how I felt so conflicted and so depressed, that there were more and more people responding. And people were sending me emails about how they were also feeling lost. They felt like they weren't really following their true purpose. They felt helpless, hopeless, and even trapped. Many people expressed that, like me, I went down this path of medicine partly because of my father's urging, partly because of the model that my mother, who is also a physician, served. But I did that while hiding a lot of my true passions and denying that passion side, which is the creative arts in my case. And so just as I described in that TED Talk about how I felt trapped and how I was just miserable, other people responded saying the same thing. And then they said, okay, my story is your story. Now what do I do? And at first I was very nervous about giving advice on that scale, but now I feel very confident, and that's why I'm very glad that you're here with me today to talk about what is your life purpose. Are you living with purpose? And if you feel like you're not, what can you do about it? And I think this is also important right now, given that the pandemic has stripped away people's sense of structure and familiarity and sense of control. It's also given people a lot of time on their own to deal with yourself, meaning this pandemic, this lockdown, has prevented you from distracting yourself in the ways that you might have before, by going out with friends or going to the bars and the pubs and drinking or shopping or just burying yourself in your work. And so a lot of people around the world are effectively waking up. And for some, this is the first time ever that they've had an extended period of time for self-reflection. Now, for some people, that's been good. But again, I've been getting phone calls and emails from people saying, okay, I've been at home binge watching your content, and now I'm like, what do I do? People are finally asking questions. What am I really doing with my life? Where am I going? What is my future, and what is my purpose? But I've also heard from people who thought they were on track that they're also feeling this agitated energy, like they're being called to step up more. And so their question is, what is my purpose now? And so that's why I really want to have this conversation with you, because I feel like there's a sense of urgency. Now, for those of you that don't know, and yes, Sarah Kate says there's a whole lot of planets in retrograde. Yes, we are influenced by the position of the moon and the stars and the planets. But this pandemic and people dealing with so much of the media and that fear and the virus fear, much of that is real. Some of it is manufactured. Isolation, social distancing, being stuck at home with some people who get on your nerves. Well, the reason that this is somewhat urgent right now is because, just as one could predict, there are now more cases of illness, depression, alcohol, eating disorders, all the ways that people cope when they feel bad. And unfortunately, people are losing hope and they're committing suicide. And unfortunately, in my background, treating trauma and dealing with addiction and eating disorders, much of that could actually be predicted by a traumatic experience like what we're going through. And in fact, the first time that I really became aware as a physician, the first time I became aware that not living with purpose could not only lead to suicide, there was this syndrome. Now, well, it's not really a syndrome, but they call it Sunday neurosis. Maybe you've heard of this. It's on Sunday as people are realizing, oh, I've got to go back to that job that I don't like. They start to feel this neurotic, this panic, this anxiety, this sense of dread. Has anyone ever experienced that Sunday neurosis? If you're in a job you don't look forward to on Sunday when your weekend's ending, that is when a lot of people would experience that sort of dis-ease. And then the other piece of it as a physician that really opened my eyes to this sense of, if we're not living in a way that's in alignment with who we really are and what we want to achieve in life, it can affect our health, was the rate of heart attacks that occur on Monday mornings between 8:30 and 9:30. So yes, Rahema, they call it the Monday blues. That's right. So Monday heart attacks and Monday blues, what we saw is that people who were kind of in the stress of getting ready for their work week on a Monday morning, knowing that they really don't like that job, it can cause a spike in all of our blood pressure, our stress hormones, our anxiety, and all of that. And in fact, if you look, some of these people are developing heart attacks. So it's one of those questions where you've got to ask yourself, well, is it really worth it to keep doing a job I hate if it could impact my life? Well, this is the question I asked myself. Back in 2005, some of you know this story, I was very, very depressed. And I was feeling that sort of, that tug of war between the part of me that really wanted to share all of these insights that I was seeing in my medical practice with people recovering from addiction and eating disorders through holistic approaches. This was, a time when I was on television every day and I was hosting my own shows and documentaries and anchoring for the news. But there was still this resistance to people hearing about things like vitamins and nutrition and meditation could impact your health. Now, I know that seems foreign to you probably today, but back then it was a thing. And it made me feel like this split. There was something that I knew in my professional life that I couldn't transmit on television. And on top of all of that, I was also really coming in touch with my own sense of dissatisfaction. That because even though I had this wonderful career with all of the trappings of success and the money and the fame, I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I was feeling like a fraud, and I was terrified that someone was going to find out. Like find out that I wasn't enough, not good enough, not smart enough, not researched enough. And that takes a toll on you. And for me personally, that waking up and feeling like, oh my God, I've got to put on that mask again and go back and keep doing that, it got to the point where I didn't want my life anymore. And so when I talk to suicide survivors, I know what that feels like when you don't want your life anymore. Now, because of my spiritual background, suicide was not an option for me. That's my own thing. But I knew I didn't want my life like it was. And that's when I called out to God for help, for support, for a way out. And so I know that there are some people that are feeling that same sense of urgency right now. And that's why I really want to have this discussion about your life purpose. And so my goal today is to really address your life purpose for two types of people. So one is the person who is currently anxious and agitated. You're maybe uncertain about your future, or you don't like the future that's painted before you. And the second kind of person is the person who may be actually inspired and motivated by the kind of work you want to get out to the world, but you feel a little agitated, like, I'm not really sure how to define what that next level is. Because what I know is that if you can get some clarity and some peace of mind and start to create a vision for your future, that can give you the kind of directionality that will inspire you. And I believe all of that is possible. As I said, I have lived it, and this is ultimately what I do now with my clients. And that's what I want to do for you. So let's start off at the beginning, or what I call the beginning. And that is, let's just define it. What do y'all think? What does it mean to say, I know what my life purpose is? I'm going to give you a couple of different breakdowns. Well, I'm here in France. So if we break down the French term, raison d'être, you've probably heard of it, but as the Americans would say, raison d'être. I can barely say it like that. But raison d'être is a reason for being. So when we say, like, what is your life purpose? What is your reason for being? We might also say, what is it that when you wake up in the morning, you feel excited and enthusiastic about? What are you willing to live for or die for? Now, if we look at the Japanese term, Ikigai, which is a two-part word smashed together, Iki and Gai, and it has to do with life and the value or the meaning of life. And so when we look at the term Ikigai, which has been, popularized over the last 30 plus years as people have looked to Japan, and they see that people who have what they consider to be a reason to live, which is not always about money or a job, if they feel like they have a reason to live, they live longer. So it's actually tied to longevity. Now, there's another way that you can describe what is your life purpose, and it's the Eastern term, or the yogic and Buddhist term of dharma. Dharma is sort of your life purpose, your true life purpose. And so what do you think it means? Like, when you think about your life purpose, what is it? And how would you tell if you're on purpose or off purpose? What I've seen in my own world and with my clients over time is you can first sort of start to look at your life in terms of the way you feel about life. So I mentioned already, when you first wake up in the morning, are you inspired? Are you enthusiastic about your day? And are you optimistic about the future? Like, what do you have to look forward to? Another reason to live might be the things that you do or experience. So for example, again, I'm going to continue to stress what life purpose is not, so that you can also hone in on what it really, really is. So life purpose is not just about a job or earning money, but it can be that thing that just totally motivates you and animates you. And one example I can give of how it doesn't always tie to money is the people who say, yeah, I don't totally love my job, but it's financing my dreams or my hobbies. I know people who are like avid rock climbers, and sometimes to be able to take off weeks and go up, to different states or countries to climb rocks and stuff, it's somewhat expensive. But they can endure their work, even if they're pretty good at the work, or they may find it completely boring, but knowing that they're living for those vacations. Now, some people would say that that's dangerous if you're only living for your next vacation, particularly if you don't ever really take those vacations. But it can give you a sense of purpose so that when you're in that job, you don't feel miserable. And on that Sunday, you don't wake up with the Sunday neurosis or the Monday blues. You get what I'm saying? So for example, here in France, we notice that people have a very different concept of just taking pleasure in the little things. And you might think, like, how boring or how basic might it be to be a baker, for example. But I've watched the bakers here, because we have literally bakeries on every corners. You may have 4 on one intersection because everybody's got to get their bread. It's a whole different thing here. And when you see the bakers and how they put so much time and attention, it's very much an artisanal craft. It's not like the bread we used to eat in America, faux show. But you also recognize that they have a relationship with the clientele. Like, you see the same people going in to get their morning baguette or croissant. It's not just, oh, let me go grab some bread. It becomes a part of the life ritual. And those little things make someone's job feel like it's more purposeful. I've talked to servers, baristas, people serving tea and coffee, and they know that how they give you that little extra dollop of cream and they remember your name or your special, soy latte, skim, whatever mix, they know that they're setting you off on your way to have a great day. And they know that they have had an impact in that. And that alone gives them a sense of purpose and a feeling like their life means something or matters, right? And so that's what I want you to kind of consider, that life is about being able to appreciate what we have and what we're doing. And it's not always that what we're doing is like discovering the cure for coronavirus or cancer or putting somebody on the moon, but it's that sense of fulfillment to know that what we do has meaning and matters. And another way that I ask you to look at, are you living your purpose, is to investigate whether or not you would experience regret if you were to die today. Now, I ask this question a lot of my clients and of myself because there's a lot of things we could do. For many of us, we have a lot of different talents. We could do a whole bunch of different things, starting different companies. But at the end of the day, I invite you to ask this question. If you were to die today, would you be dying with any regrets? Now, this is a question that my business partner, Derry Llewellyn Davies, this Welsh adventurer and business strategist, he's my partner in a business called Diamond Life Design. And about 16 years ago, and he's the author of this book, Life's Great Adventure. About 16, 17 years ago, I guess now, Derry was face to face with this question, holding his father's hand just before his dad died. And his father admitted to him, for the first time that Derry had ever heard these words, he said that his dad looked him in the eyes and said, "Son, I've been such a fool. I'm dying with so much regret, with all of the dreams and things I wanted to do that I never did." And in the book, Derry talks about how, his father had been a businessman, he had done well, and then the business kind of failed. But he always thought that at least his dad was moving in a direction that he thought was meaningful. And yet, on the day, 2 days before his father passed, he said that he was dying with regret. And so that was a moment, a very pivotal moment in Derry's life. He determined, and he was young then, he was just in his, late 20s, he determined that I am not going to go out in this life with any regrets. And he started to think about his own death. And I invite you to do this as well. He said he started to think about if he had his grandkids on his knee and he were telling them stories, what kind of stories would he be telling them? Would it be all about the businesses he started and all of that? And he was like, no, I want to leave a legacy of adventure. And so Derry created something that he calls the Global Adventurer's Grand Slam, which includes climbing the highest peak on the 7 continents, an Ironman, the Marathon des Sables, the Marathon des Sables, which is 6 marathons back-to-back during a 7-day period across the Sahara Desert, carrying everything you need on your back in a backpack. So he's done that, did the Ironman, did all these things, and now he's preparing for another crazy feat of going across the Amazon jungle, 6 marathons in 7 days with everything on your back, something crazy like that. Now, Derry did continue to go on, smashing it in business, starting new companies, advising multiple, high-level boards across Europe, and helping out smaller entrepreneurs along the way. And, he's been incredibly successful in business, but he also wanted to have that balance between adventure and being fully present for his children. And he's doing exactly that. And so that question of, if you were to die today, would you be going out with any regret. And if you can tune into that energy and ask yourself, well, what do I need to do so that I wouldn't die with regrets? It may tune you into a piece of your purpose, all right? So I'm going to check on some of the comments here. Glad to see that some of you are here. Don't worry if you're coming in late. So Kati says, I think my life purpose every day when I go to the grocery store or meeting strangers on the street, just when I talk to them and say something positive. I love that, Kati, because that's really like, it's more than just your job. It's like you are taking on this role of being a positive force in the world. Love it. And Shelley says, my Ikigai is holding space in the world for people to live with balance, joy, and authenticity. I love it. Yeah, that would inspire me to get up too. And Margot, yeah, bread in Europe is a whole different thing to America. And Annalise, hi there. My Ikigai is inspiring people and make them happy by giving them perspective for a better future. I love it. Absolutely. And Joy says, my life purpose is to add value to people's lives. Amen. I love this. I love this. And Ninette says, you would be very sad if you died today. Even I have always lived with my heart as my guide. I know I still have my soul song in me to be conveyed from the heart in a free frame. Oh, dearest Ninette, well, you are taking steps. I know that you've been taking steps to live your purpose. And that's what I want to get into today and also tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going live about how to break free from fear. So, but stick with me. So here's another aspect of your life purpose that I want to bring forth. And that is what I learned from my mother. So Derry's perspective came from his dad. My perspective about living a life of no regrets came from my mother. Some of you have heard this as well. My mother was a feisty, she still is feisty, a feisty little 5 foot something from British Guyana. And she unfortunately watched her own mother die of complications from type 2 diabetes. And it was very, very hard on my mother. She, at that moment, as an 11-year-old, not even a teenager yet, she determined that she wanted to become a nurse. And even though her family said no, they did not want her to become a nurse, she did. She ended up going to England. She became a nurse. She ended up marrying an American and then moved to the United States. And while working in the hospital system, she was like, why are these doctors condescending and talking down to us? She was not having it. She decided to go and become a doctor. So I was only 3 years old. She had 3 children. She was a brown-skinned immigrant with a funny accent, as she says it, in a very male-dominated medical society. And yet she put herself into medical school. But my mom's life was driven by this purpose that what she found out when she became a nurse was, you don't have to die of type 2 diabetes, not the way she watched her mother die in so much pain. She found out that type 2 diabetes is a condition that is both treatable and manageable and even preventable. So she took it on as kind of her mission, her crusade. And she said it like this, I will never let a person die of a preventable disease. Now that's pretty intense, right? But that's what I saw my mother do. And that's why before health coaches existed, that's exactly what my mom was doing. She was coaching people. She was finding out about their life and their lifestyle and their environment and their thoughts and what happened in their past. Like she was doing integrative medicine before that term even existed. And when she started doing acupuncture in the 90s, that gave her an additional insight into really helping people with their energy, their lifestyle, all of that. And so what happened to me a few years ago, I mentioned that first TED Talk. My mother used to say that your life purpose is best viewed in the rear view mirror, meaning hindsight is 20/20, meaning if you look back over your life, you can probably identify signs and clues about your life purpose. And if you would look at them, I mean, ideally, if we would tune into them as they're happening and trust our heart and follow that, we would be living our purpose as it happened for my mother. But there's one thing that she told me a few years ago that added so much more peace for me. And that was this. I told you about this TED Talk that I did, Become Who You Really Are. And a few years ago, I showed it to my mom. I was visiting her in the United States. And my mother has developed pretty advanced stage 𝐼𝐚𝐤𝐿's disease. And it was really hard to watch her lose her memory. She was always such a proud woman. So to forget things, in the early part of the disease, it really bothered her. And it bothered me to see her go from being so fierce and independent to completely dependent. But there was a moment a few years back after that TED Talk where her memory was there for like 20 minutes. Perfect length for an 18-minute TED Talk. So I remember pulling out my laptop and opening it up and inviting her to watch. So she watched and she's listening and she's kind of nodding and she's like talking back to me on the screen as if, I could hear her. And at the end of my TED Talk, I closed down the laptop and just waited. And she just nodded and she said, "I can tell you're doing your master's work. Good job, keep it up." And it was so touching to me because my mom has always said that she feels like she's doing her master's work. According to her, upbringing, the master is God. And what she said to me a few years ago was, I have lived a full life. I have done what I want. I have dated what I want. I have lived where I've wanted to. And she said, if I were to cock up my toes and meet my maker, I believe he will say, "Job well done." She said she was ready. And this was so touching to me because it was at a point where I was really feeling bad for her. Like I had early in her Alzheimer's progression, I'd tried everything, kind of jumped into that rescuer mode that so many of us rescuer types do. So to hear her say in her own words that she was satisfied with the life that she'd lived was so deeply moving to me. And of course, for her to say to me that she could tell I was living and fulfilling the master's work. And she told me to keep going. She said, "Yeah, I wish you and my granddaughter were here more often, but if you love France, if that's where you want to be, then go." And so what all of this has really taught me, both as a physician and as a caretaker of my mom, and now as a mentor to so many light workers around the world, there are a couple of things that you need to know about your life purpose. The first of those is to know this. Your life purpose is not fixed in stone. And it doesn't mean you only have one life purpose. Your life purpose will evolve over time. So early in your life purpose may be all about getting through school, getting to university, or getting that first job. When you have children, you may feel like, oh my God, my only purpose is to feed the baby, change the baby, speaking from experience. And you may find later that you're in your entrepreneurial career and your life purpose is all about getting established. And then as life shifts and changes, you may find that your life purpose is going to be more tied to your heart and your soul. Like, wait, there's a bigger life purpose than just what I'm doing on the earth through these various life stages. So I want you to recognize that one, your life purpose is not fixed. It evolves with you. Two, your life purpose is actually defined by you. It is self-defined. It is not defined by other people. Now, I know this, let me unpack this a little bit. When I experienced my utter breakdown and hitting rock bottom, I was not far from here in Cannes, and I had literally called out to God to take my life. I was depressed. I didn't want to go back to the life that I was living in America, and I had given up. I wasn't suicidal, but I didn't want my life as I knew it to go on. And so I cried out to God. I said, take it, take my life, take my business. I don't know what I'm doing with it. You tell me. And that's when I had this out-of-body experience, went into the light, and I saw a total life review in a split second. And seeing that life review in an instant, I knew and I saw how all of the choices I had made, even though they weren't all conscious choices, led me to that moment of depression. It was completely obvious. It was like an instant knowing. And I could feel the presence of a guide, some sort of spirit guide. And I remember kind of thinking, wait, so all of those choices are why I'm depressed, feeling trapped and miserable in a job I'm not loving. You mean to tell me that I could have chosen differently? You mean it wasn't up to my parents, the medical society? No. We as souls come to this planet as a little drop of consciousness, drop of light, God consciousness, a spark of the divine, whatever works for you. As a soul, you incarnate and you take on human form. And it's up to you to discover, uncover, and declare your life purpose, your dharma. It's up to you. Now, I know that can be really flying in the face of conventional wisdom that says, but wait, my mama wanted me to become this, that, and the other. You know, one of the things I saw so much in my medical career is a lot of us doctors were pushed into medicine because they came from a long line of doctors. It's like, that's just what you do. That's your destiny. And yet we were finding all these people who were smart enough to get in and to succeed as a doc, but they weren't feeling fulfilled because they were living out someone else's vision and dream. Your vision for your life has got to be defined by you if you want it to be sustainable and fulfilling. You can do it for a while. I did it for a while, trying to fulfill the vision and the values of my father, and then the medical society, and then the media that I was working in. But it wasn't fulfilling. And for me, it wasn't sustainable. Because getting to a point where you don't want your life anymore, that's the very definition of not sustainable. So it's really important for you to recognize that your purpose in life has got to be defined by you. Now, yes, there will be times when you're living to fulfill your role, and that involves other people, like your spouse or your children. Absolutely. It may be that you're in a period where it's like your life purpose is to do whatever you can so that you can be there for your grandkids. If that gives you a sense of meaning and a sense of inspiration, then yes, that can be your life purpose. But the idea that you have to go into a particular school of study or a job to try to please your parents, that's never going to work. They're never going to be 100% pleased, and neither will you. Just giving it to you like I know. And again, your life purpose is not always about money. It can be about so many other things. It can be about being of service. It can be about being that global citizen that helps other people. It could be that you are interested in leaving a legacy that has nothing to do with money. So just remember these as you're really starting to think about what is your life purpose. Because ultimately, each of us is on a journey of ascension. We are on a heroic journey of the soul. So we incarnate, we lose, for most of us, that connection with the divine. We don't lose the connection, we lose the remembrance. We lose the memory of how perfect and pure we are. That's part of the game of incarnating in human form. You go through this amnesia of your divine state. And so we're on a soul journey of first self-actualization. So you've heard of Abraham Maslow, you've heard of Carl Jung, that says each of us we've got this internal drive to become that which we must become. The writer must write if they are to be at peace. In my case, the teacher must teach if I'm to be at peace. I've got to create. Anytime I've tried to shove myself into one predefined little box or area, I suffer. That's when dis-ease manifests. And so each of us is on a soul journey to first self-actualize, that is to wake up and recognize that we have this divine potential to become something unique, and it's up to us to recognize it. Then we're on this path eventually. It usually happens later in life, but I know that there's a whole new generation of wise children who are so tuned in that they get into the self-transcendence part of the life destiny or life purpose. And that is, you will get to a point where you realize your life is not about you. It's not just about fulfilling your needs, but it's about transcending the ego and our basic needs so that we can be in service to something greater. Now that could be to your local community, it could be to your family, it could be to the whole planet and all of its inhabitants. But we are each on this journey of self-actualization and eventually self-transcendence, where we connect to this global consciousness. And if you take it even further, if you're a more spiritually oriented person, you could say that each of us is on a journey toward enlightenment, where you recognize the truth of who you really are. You are beyond the ego. You are beyond the body. You are beyond all of your neuroses. And when you can have that pure connection, you start to realize that too has been part of your purpose all along. So, how do you find your life purpose, or how do you just define it? As I'm saying, it needs to be defined by you. Well, what I mentioned about my mom, she said, your life purpose is best viewed in the rear view mirror. Meaning hindsight is 20/20. When you look over your life and do a life review, can you see that there have been little signposts, turning points, maybe even the hand of some divine presence moving you or showing you what your purpose may be? I know for me, I tried to kind of hide a lot of my talents, or hide the fact that I'm a visionary. I see visions. I hear voices. I'm not schizophrenic. I have been multiply evaluated by psychiatrists, but that's my thing. And I tried to hide it for so long. Being an empath was so much associated with this stigma and pain and being labeled a weirdo that I hid it for many years. But as I look back over my life, I can see that's part of my gift. Translating what I feel or sense to help other people is part of my life purpose. Translating complex medical terms or psychological terms and even spiritual texts, and then delivering it to the world through books, through television, on stage, in my workshops, that is part of my destiny, my dharma, my life purpose. And as I look back over my life and all the ways that I denied it or tried to escape it, I realize my life purpose has been there all along. And I wonder if you might know the same. Is it easier if you put it on paper to look back? Now, if you've done the free life writing program that I put out there, it's 3 keys to become the hero of your own life story. You'll see that I invite you to do a timeline of life events. So for me, in that out-of-body near-death experience, it happened instantaneously. I saw my life review. Now what we do in psychology is we invite you to create a timeline of life events and start to look at the major turning points in your life and the meaning, the beliefs, the assumptions, the things that you took on at those points. We're going to be doing this live actually this weekend. On Saturday the 23rd and Sunday the 24th, I'm leading a 2-day workshop called Stories with Soul, where I will lead you through looking at your timeline of life events and then matching it up with the hero's journey, as described by Joseph Campbell in his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. So even Joseph Campbell said, just being human, you can look at the different stages that we go through in life, and it matches up perfectly with the hero's journey, which he also called the monomyth. There is really one journey that we all, across all cultures and across time, we're all on it. So if you'd like to join me for Stories with Soul, or you'd like some coaching from me, I'm doing this 2-day workshop starting on Saturday. So that's one of the ways you can start to identify your life purpose, is to look at this timeline of life events and look for those signposts and those milestones. Now, in this book, in the Real Self-Love Handbook, I go through, in the first part of the book, how to define your values. So our life purpose can often be described as a mission that we're on. And typically, your life mission is aligned with your values. So, what do you value in life? Do you value truth? Do you value authenticity? Do you value freedom? What the things that you value are often the things that would drive you to do what you do. So again, remembering that your life purpose isn't always tied to a specific job or making money, but it's about expressing who you really are. And who you really are is very closely aligned with your values. So if you've got the Real Self-Love Handbook and you go through the list of values, there's love-based values that you'll start to recognize. Those values are tied to the experience and the expression of your soul. And that means it's part of the real you. So you'll notice in the Real Self-Love Handbook, we go through this process of helping you distinguish who are you really as a spiritual being versus who have you been programmed to be. Because we human beings are sort of a dual part being. We are both human animal, we have this inner mammal, but we are also human spirit. And your spiritual DNA, or what I call the soul print, can be identified, and it's separate from who you've been programmed to be. Like we get programmed by our environment, by our parents, by the media, all of that shaping and molding of the ego and all those masks that we wear. That is part of your human experience. But alongside that is your soul. And there is this spiritual experience. And so when you start to look at the values that really define you, that is another way to start getting in tune with what is my purpose? Because most of us are willing to live and die for our values. So as you go through the Real Self-Love Handbook, you'll see that you're asked to really look at your values. Now, one way that you can sort of explore what we call your values in action is by taking something called the Values in Action Survey. There's this wonderful survey, I mention it in my first TED Talk, that was developed by Chris Peterson under the auspices of Martin Seligman, the grandfather of positive psychology. And by taking the VIA, you go to viacharacter.org, V as in values, I for in, A as for action. viacharacter.org is a free questionnaire that will help you identify the character strengths and traits that are inherently you. And I believe some of these can be influenced by the nurturing of your environment, but a lot of them are what you're born with. It is part of your spiritual DNA. And as you start to look at your values, as you start to look at these qualities that are maybe not tangible, but they are so true to you, it helps you hone in on what you are really here on this planet to do. Okay? So I would invite you to have a look at that. One of the other exercises from positive psychology that I have all of my patients do is something called writing about a peak experience. I even did this with my students at the International University of Monaco, where I taught positive psychology. So if you did the 3 keys to becoming the hero of your life, you'll see that I invite you to create that timeline of life events. You can write a short story about a low point in your life, and then I invite you to write about a peak experience in your life. By writing about one of your peak experiences, you can really start to zero in on some of these traits and qualities in you that get activated. And typically a peak experience is an experience where we experience the flow state. The flow state was described even back in the time of Maslow. It was made more popular by 𝐚𝐤𝐿, who also taught us in my positive psychology course. 𝐚𝐤𝐿 wrote a book on flow, and flow is a state that we get into where we lose track of time, we lose track of self, we're not in that self-critical voice or judgment. We actually feel like we've become one with whatever task we're doing, or we even can feel like we're one with the universe. And the state of flow is often tied to your life purpose. And so by writing about a peak experience, a time when you were in the flow state, and then going back and analyzing it, like we'll be doing this weekend at Stories with Soul, you might discover, there are clues to your life purpose that you may not have even given much attention to, but now they deserve to have the light shined on them. So I invite you to do that. If you haven't done the life writing exercises in the free mini course, do them. And then join us this weekend for Stories with Soul, so you can have my live coaching to coach you through writing these stories for the therapeutic value they give of showing you who you really are and what your purpose is. Of course, Stories with Soul is also good for writers and speakers because you're going to learn to become a really good storyteller using the hero's journey as your framework. I use it in every book that I write, every speech that I give. It's the basis of everything. So these are some clues for how you can hone in on your life purpose, looking back over time to see those signs, looking at your values, looking at your character strengths and your peak experiences, all can give you a sense of what is your purpose. And remembering that your purpose is not defined by other people. You can't live for your parents. You will get to a point, even if you feel like, oh my God, if I quit this job, if I get out of this relationship, if I leave school, my parents will be so disappointed, or my parents will kill me. Your parents probably won't kill you. If you think they might, you better call the police. Will they be disappointed? They may be. But they too will get to a point in their life, or maybe the next life, where they realize we are all on a journey of the soul. And our parents mean well. I mean, they're doing this for our benefit, trying to push us and nudge us into a career that they think is going to be successful, that is going to be secure and provide us with a healthy future, or they just want us to make the family look good. They may have their own reasons, but ultimately, all humans will get to a point where they recognize, I am on a journey of the soul. And it's not up to me to dictate what anybody else should be doing. Not my kid. I don't try to tell my kid what she should do. I mean, I have my opinions. But that is not my role. That is not my job. And so it's your job to do that. So Phyllis is asking about the 3 keys to life writing. That is a free mini course where you can get my guidance on doing the life review, writing about a peak experience and a low point and analyzing it. It comes with guided meditations so that you can also visualize your future, because that's a big part of tuning into your life purpose. So I've asked you to look back from the position of your deathbed. Could you die today or 50 years from now and say, yes, I'm ready to meet my maker. I could die with no regrets. That's one way to look at finding out, what do I need to be doing? What would leave me with that sense of fulfillment that I've done something that matters? The other way to do it is from today, looking forward. Over the next year, 5 years, and 10 years. What do I want to say about my life that would inspire me to get up each day? This has worked wonders for people who are suicidal. If you saw my interview with Rob Goddard, who shared his story in this book, The Top 10 Traits of Highly Resilient People. This is a man who went from suicidal with a clear plan on how he was going to end his life 10 years ago to creating a multi-million-pound business, connecting with the love of his life, reconnecting with his children, and now creating a legacy that he is so proud of and that inspires him. And part of the transition for many people who are suicidal is that they don't see a future that inspires them. They feel hopeless because there is no vision that would pull them out of the darkness. And whether you're suicidal or not, if you just feel like you're already rocking life, but you want to get to the next level, you need an inspiring vision. That's what happened with Derry. That's what pulled him out of his own misery. He was working at a job where he was succeeding. You know, he was working in a big company and smashing it, but holding his father's hand before he passed away, and his father saying that he was dying with so much regret. Derry knew he didn't want to go out that way. And so he started to look forward. What can I aim for because your vision is your blueprint. The vision that you create is going to set the stage for where you're going. What vision would inspire me such that each day I would feel like I'm living my truth and my purpose? That's why some of these baristas and these bakers and these people who do otherwise mundane jobs can still get up with a sense of purpose and vitality. It's because they have this inspiring vision. And so I invite you to look at that. Check out Life's Great Adventure to read about how Derry did it. If you read the Real Self-Love Handbook, the very last chapters are about the vision that have inspired me. I get visions when I go into my downloads, visions and downloads when I go into meditation. And many of the visions are about what my life would look like if I were living full out. Looking at the peak experiences of the past, you can start to recreate your life based on living in accordance with your values, your vision, your personality, honoring your energy, the body energy type that you have. Not everybody's the same. You know, I invite you to do the vitality test. My friend Nick Haynes at the 5 Institute in the UK created a free questionnaire that you can take online that will tell you which of the 5 Chinese elements influences you, that make you naturally brilliant and a little bit susceptible to illness or burnout. Because once you recognize your unique energy and your soul print, your spiritual DNA, as I outline in the Real Self-Love Handbook, you bring all of that together and you decide to consciously architect your future. So just to recap, your life purpose is not fixed. It evolves over the lifespan, and it is best defined by you, not your parents or society or peers. It's you. You're on a journey of the soul where your life mission, your purpose is to first become who you were really meant to become. That is self-actualization. And then to transcend that, to be connected to something bigger than you. And then ultimately to become enlightened, where you are one with all. That's the journey that we are all on. But you as an individual have your own soul print, your own karma, your own influences, your own personality. You have your own interests and passions and desires. And when you bring all of it together and choose to consciously architect your life in alignment with those, you will start to create a life of no regrets. You will feel that beautiful feeling that says, okay, if I were to die today, there may still be things on my bucket list, but I could die knowing that I was living my purpose. Is that helpful? I pray that that is inspiring. Yes. So yes, it is helpful to have a vision that inspires. That is ultimately what I believe in. Now, it may be that I'm a visionary and that's my default is to I ask my clients. It's like when I sit down with a client who's doing personal branding or they're doing whatever, they're writing a new book. I always want to know, what is the vision? When this book comes out that you're writing, or when you do that TED Talk, or when you host your own show, or you start this new business, it all starts with the vision. And so I ask you to just tune in. If I were to wave a magic wand, ding, and magically place you a little bit into your future, where you are living in alignment with your soul's true purpose, using your skills and talents in a meaningful way, meaningful and fulfilling to you, in service and support to others, what would that look like? What would it feel like? What do you see yourself doing? Where are you? Are you on stage? Are you in an office? Are you flying from here to there, leading workshops and retreats? Are you at home? Are you taking care of a family? Start with that vision. The more that you can bring it into more sensory awareness, that's when we start getting into manifesting. It's not just wishful thinking. We can manifest that. And so by bringing in more senses, like what do you smell? What do you taste? What do you touch? What do you hear? You can do all of this on your own. So the 3 keys to becoming the hero of your life is a free training that includes many of these elements. And then if you'd like my personal training and coaching, Saturday and Sunday, May 23rd and 24th, I'm hosting Stories with Soul, where you can work with me personally. It includes an online training. There's video lessons that take you through storytelling, takes you through the hero's journey. And then I teach you personally on Zoom with people from around the world. And bit by bit, we go through dissecting your own stories and seeing how you really are on this heroic journey of the soul. It's incredibly transformative, and it is so nourishing when you start to look at your life from the perspective of the soul instead of this limited perception of you as this human animal, the ego, your inner mammal. I really want to inspire you to look at your life from that version of reality, because it is, I mean, it's transformational. It is absolutely transformational. And that is part of my mission. My mission is to help inspire and awaken light workers around the world, to help you elevate your profile and your prestige so that as the light turns on in you, you turn on the lights of your clients and people around the world. I know that it's part of my mission as a messenger, as a way shower, as a teacher, and as a healer, to work with people who are dedicated to the light and love. And I do that using all of my talents. No longer am I trying to stick myself in one little box. I'm not just a doctor or just an acupuncturist. I'm not just a TV personality trying to fit in. I'm not even just a brand specialist. That is all gone. The last few years, the messages have been coming clearer and clearer that there is one Drea, and she is here to use all of her gifts and talents to bring more light and love and elevating consciousness on the planet. And I do it in a number of different ways. And so my last little word to you would be to also embrace all of you. Going through these processes of conscious evolution means that you start to shine the light on the areas of your life where they haven't gotten enough attention. And part of that means shining the light on your shadow, like looking deeply into your subconscious, where some of your hidden talents are, where some of the disowned parts of your personality have been shoved aside. Parts of you that got fractured and hidden because of abuse or trauma or being bullied or even being teased like I was for being a little weird with all of my empathic abilities. The process of conscious evolution involves bringing more light and awareness to who you really are, and then bringing those pieces together and integrating them. That is the beauty of what all spiritual practices are about. Even the work of Carl Jung was about this integration, bringing all parts of you to the fore. Now, yes, it may be that you're not going to become a ballroom dancer, but you may decide to bring more music and more dance and movement into your life so that you honor that part of you. And by honoring who you really are, you're able to bring the best of you to the other situations of your life. And that could be work, that could be relationships, that could be what you do at home. So please bear in mind that you're on a journey of integration as well. Don't be afraid to look into the parts of you that have been wounded. Now is the time of this great awakening that we can heal them. As we heal and as we integrate these parts of us, that wounded inner child, and you may have many wounded children inside of you. I know in my case, I had, the wounded 3-year-old from my parents' divorce. There was the wounded, the wounded toddler, the wounded grade school kid, the teenage version of me that had some little wounds. Like, you're not going to have just one wounded inner child. Most of us have a few. But don't be afraid of shining the light and bringing the healing so that those parts of you can be integrated into your heart, into who you really are. And then you carry that forward, that wisdom. And that's all of the programs that I create are designed with that aim in mind. Even if I'm coaching you on a business front, it's all about bringing the best of you forward. All right. So it's been a joy to connect with you, and I've loved seeing some of the comments come in. I'm so grateful that you all are also tuning into your life purpose. And I pray that as you're moving forward, you can now take that 2020 vision, right? We can have this very clear vision about who you are called to be, and then you can step it up and live it even more passionately and powerfully. All right? So I look forward to seeing you this weekend for Stories with Soul. And tomorrow, bear in mind, I will also be going live at the same time. But tomorrow we're going to address fear. And I have some specific practices, including a guided meditation to help you heal and move beyond whatever blocks you related to fear. The fear of being your true self, the fear of being judged, the fear of success and what that means, maybe the fear of disappointing your parents or your partner by shifting and living more in alignment with your authentic self. So tomorrow we will handle that live. So just know that you are loved, you are cared for. I see you, I believe in you. And as always, my friend, please remember that you are a gift to this world. So share your presence with passion. Much love, everyone. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Much love. Bye.